MAV's Coffee Clarity with Denise is brought to you in partnership with Drive Media and Consulting and their premier sponsors. Subscribe on your favorite streaming platforms and share. If you just found us, welcome. And if you're a regular, welcome back. Denise DiGrigoli has spent her life in the creative industries as an entrepreneur, helping people transform their visions into thriving businesses, working with individuals and teams to find their purpose and live their life vibrantly. On her pod, Denise delivers business intel and life hacks with wit and wisdom in short shots like a strong espresso with a solid sense of humor. Enjoy this episode of MAV's Coffee Clarity, and here's MAV.
Welcome, my friends. You're on MAV's Coffee Clarity. That's right. We're here every week spilling the beans with business intel and life hacks designed to move you forward in work, life, and self-care. And come on, who doesn't need that? If you're a newbie, welcome. And if you're a regular, you know this is where I interview fascinating mavericks, change makers, entrepreneurs, innovators that have maved their way through something and give us those silver linings after those transformations. Today is no different. We have an uber maverick in the house. I want to introduce to you Gary Noesner, a true pioneer in communication under pressure. Gary spent over 30 years with the FBI, where he became the first chief of the crisis negotiation unit within the FBI's critical incident response group. I know that's a mouthful, but you've got to tune in. As the Bureau's top authority on crisis and hostage negotiation, he built the program from the ground up, training agents and shaping the FBI's philosophy of negotiation first. He was instrumental in taking on negotiation from being just a little extra skill to a formal, professionalized discipline. And you know, we talk a lot about that here on MAV's Coffee Clarity. This is a core tool that the Bureau still uses today. From high-stakes hijackings to kidnappings and international standoffs. Okay, this is no lightweight person. He's led conversations that have saved lives, proving that empathy and communication can be just as powerful as force. He's the author of Stalling for Time, My Life as an FBI Hostage Negotiator. And today, he continues to share those insights, not only here, but with leaders and everyday people who use negotiation to navigate conflict, build trust, and communicate with clarity. Welcome, my new friend, Gary Noesner.
Wow, it's a pleasure to be here, Denise. That's quite an introduction. I hope I can live up to the billing.
You certainly can. So in full transparency, I listened to Gary on my friend Kelly Leonard's podcast, and I thought more people need to know about how you take FBI negotiation skills that have saved lives into their home. But before we do that, I want to hear, I did some homework. It seems like you were in the Navy. Is that true? Did I do my homework? No.
My son was
a
Navy SEAL, but I was not in the Navy.
Okay. So Mav had one fact incorrect, but that's all right. That's why you need to tell us. So what got you to the FBI? What was the path?
Well, I watched a television show when I was about 8 years old about the FBI, and I was intrigued by it. You know, for a young man, you know, chasing gangsters and spies and bank robbers, and you know, the old running boards with the FBI Thompson machine gun and all this. It just really resonated with me. And my mother got me a book about the FBI as a kid, and that was all I ever wanted to do. And you know, I went to college and then joined the FBI after that. And you know, it's not an easy or guaranteed process, but I was fortunate enough where I got in, and you know, it was a fantastic career. It was everything I thought it would be. And yeah, so that's the story. It's not particularly complicated.
So now you're in the FBI, and I think you were a certain number of years in before you got this position. And did that position come out of the Waco event where you became
No.
Okay, so how did
the FBI, yeah, I mean, I was, you know, several years in the FBI before I had a chance to get involved in what was then an already existing, but, you know, relatively limited specialty of negotiations that was started by NYPD in '73, and the FBI kind of borrowed it and expanded it and spread it around the world the following year in '74. And it was a more rudimentary program that was based strictly on bargaining with hostage takers. I became a negotiator, you know, a few years after that, and started doing it in the field as a part-time function, as most FBI negotiators are, and then at the same time working international terrorism cases. And then in 1990, I was asked to go to Quantico to be one of two full-time negotiators and managing the program and teaching and responding operationally. And then after the infamous Waco incident in 93,
Mm,
there was a clear realization on the FBI's part that the negotiation program had been undervalued and understaffed and underappreciated. And so they created a much larger standalone unit, and I was made the first chief of that. So I didn't start the whole negotiation program, but I certainly am proud of my contributions to it. And
well, from
so,
what I've read, you led a lot of the initiatives. So I don't. I know we're going to talk a little bit about Waco, but when you talk about high stake kidnappings, riots, like what? How does someone like you, or any person, frankly, get into that line of work with a sense of like, I'm going to be okay and I'm going to do a great job? Because one of the things you say is like in negotiation, right? It's the old school was, I'll give you a hamburger, you give me the hostage back.
right.
So tell me about that, because I think everybody has a predetermined idea of what negotiation looks like for them. And I want to demystify that.
Yeah, I mean, again, when the program started, it was pretty limited to what we would call bargaining, quid pro quo bargaining.
Mm,
Someone's in a bank with hostages, and their robbery took too long to develop, so they are surrounded by the police, and they're trying to get out. So they threaten to kill the hostages, and they want their getaway car, and so forth and so on. And in those cases, psychologically, you have to realize that the person is there to get something they can't get on their own. In that case, money. They're
right.
not really there to die. I'm not saying nobody
Right,
dies.
exactly.
Yeah, but we have the ability to influence and control the outcome, because at the end of the day, they're left with either cooperate with the police or run the risk of being seriously injured or killed.
Right.
And it sometimes takes them a while to appreciate that reality, but in almost all the cases they do. And in fact, contrary to what many believe, most hostage situations end peacefully. And it's rare that a hostage is killed for the very
Mm,
reasons. There's usually not, that bank robber doesn't have a personal a set of animosity, anger towards the hostages. They're just trying to get their money.
right.
When we see violence, it's more likely directed against someone for whom you have a history with, or a bad romantic relationship, a workplace situation, whatever that might be.
Mm,
But what we found out when I became a full-time negotiator in 90, only 10% of what we in law enforcement writ large were doing were bargaining situations. What in reality we were facing were people in an emotional state. Again,
right.
the boyfriend holding the girlfriend who's threatened to leave him, the person who's holding his boss hostage because he got fired, on and on and on. You can think of many examples that we still see every day. Those, in fact, are the more challenging, because we're dealing with a state of high emotion.
Mm,
And in some instances, these people feel there's no turning back, and they may have already committed something pretty bad. But so we borrowed active listening skills from the mental health community, and in essence, crisis intervention skills to
how
engage with these people. Go ahead.
So when I do a lot of strategic consulting. When you introduce a new concept, you're often met with, yeah, no, that's not going to work, Denise. Or
Yeah.
I've done it like this before, so that works. So how did you bring that from mental health? Because I'm imagining the FBI agents being like, yeah, no, Gary, that's not how we do it.
Yeah, and law enforcement is paramilitary, and many people thought, you're mollycoddling these criminals, and you're the old joke question about, so it made you mad when your mother did this or that. I mean, these are all, sort of
Mm,
misguided interpretations of what we do. Active listening is merely a way of acknowledging to somebody that I hear and I understand what you're saying. I don't necessarily agree with it,
right.
but you don't need to be demonstrative and threatening anymore to get me to listen, because I'm showing you that I'm listening. And through that process, we ultimately earn the right to be of influence to them. It's even Stephen Covey, the business guru, kind of put a nice phrase on this, that, first we seek to understand and then to be understood.
Mm,
And, we have to earn the right to be of influence, and we do that through listening and understanding and coming across as non-judgmental, genuine, sincere, things that they don't expect to hear from law enforcement. And it's a powerful, powerful tool of social influence. So we practiced those skills. We taught those skills around the country. And you're quite right. Initially, a lot of police officers never heard of them, didn't know anything about them, were a little skeptical. Now it's the bread and butter. I mean, you can't go to a negotiation training session around the country where every negotiator in there is conversant in active listening skills. And I'm very proud that that's, I think, the major contribution that the FBI made to the world of negotiations.
Do you think it's as easy to train on the topic today as it was back then?
Yeah, I think it's a little bit easier because there's a lot more information, there's a lot more case studies, there's things we've learned through trial and error in the law enforcement business. But to be able to say to if I was training you as a negotiator and I explain these skills to you and I give you role playing exercises to practice these skills, I help to impart a sense of confidence on your part that I don't control the outcome, but I'm going to use these skills to the best of my ability to achieve the outcome we want. Once you know that, you sort of eliminate performance anxiety that so many get. Oh my God, he's going to kill somebody if I screw this up, if I say the wrong word. That's not the case. Nothing you say as a negotiator is going to cause somebody to die, unless you said go ahead and kill them, which would be ridiculous. But basically, once you realize that these skills give you the ability to respond effectively, to restate the content of the person's problem and reflect the feelings they have about it. This is powerful, powerful stuff, and it works.
We're definitely going to role play towards the end. We're going to do it.
Sure.
We're going to do it for the audience, for sure. I'll put my name right out there.
And it's really effective stuff. And what I like about it so much is armed with these skills, the negotiator, again, doesn't have the burden of, oh my God, there's children in there. If he kills them, it's because I said something wrong or did something wrong. No, the only thing you control is yourself.
That's right.
I would go into every negotiation and preach that others should, with confidence that any objective examination of what I did is going to say this guy sincerely and genuinely tried to help these people out of a situation that he or she did not create. I didn't create that. I'm not God. I didn't cause this conflict in your family, but I'm going to try to help everybody get out. At the end of the day, I can only control so much. I can't guarantee an outcome.
There had to be pressure on, as the chief of this whole operation and training others for you to be like, I'm role modeling the ultimate behavior. So take us through to like one of your craziest negotiations that you really felt like, wow, I'm really out here on a plank, whether it be a kidnapping, the Waco event. Like, where were you like, wow, I really got to pull out the stops right now? I know Waco was 51 days, but whatever you think. I want to really hear like the craziest one where you're like, oh boy.
There's a ton of stories, but 3 years after Waco, we confronted an anti-government group in Montana called the Freemen. It's in my book. And in that incident, these anti-government people, for much of the incident, wouldn't even talk to us, refused to talk to us, so we had to use intermediaries. Eventually, we convinced them that maybe they didn't have as much time or shouldn't be as relaxed as they would. Now, we didn't plan to go in, but we suggested that maybe they should be concerned about that. And that caused us to have some direct contact. And eventually, one of the leader at that point wanted to come out and talk to his leader, who we had arrested already. And, and I said, well, what do you want to talk to him about? He said, I want to ask him if we surrender, how he feels about that, what he wants us to do with this.
So he was checking in with his boss.
He's checking in with his boss. And I said to him, well, what are you going to say if he tells you to continue with the siege? And he says, well, I guess I'll have to make my own decision. Now, that convinced me that he was looking for authorization to do what he was planning to do anyway.
Right.
So I had to convince the FBI bosses, let's let this guy leave the crisis site, will fly him in an FBI plane several hours to Billings, where
Wow.
he will meet in jail with his incarcerated boss, who we arrested. And after that conversation, we'll let him back inside the crisis site. Now, that's never been done anywhere to this day, as far as I know, other than that case.
Would you say that
And
was
it
a
worked.
calculated risk on your part because of your active listening? Like you were betting on your intuition, or were you like, this is my last roll of the dice? Which was it?
Well, I'll explain it. No, I didn't look at it as the last roll of the dice, but here's how I looked at it.
Yeah,
My boss, in fact, asked this question: what do we get out of this?
right.
And I said, you're asking the wrong question. I said, the question is, what do we lose? What do we give up? We get right back to where we are right at this moment. And he's been out, he's talked to his boss, and if his boss says continue on, then that's where we are.
What did the boss
It's no
say?
more. He said to surrender. It's time to end the siege. So we got the outcome that we wanted, and it helped resolve it. But you have to be creative and flexible, and you have to ask yourself some important questions. What happens too often in law enforcement, in the military,
Mm-hmm.
and sometimes in business, leaders get stuck on the posturing of power and control. And
Yes.
sometimes they will block or object or fail to agree to something that, when you really break it down in an unemotional way, is not that problematic. But our egos get in the way. So that's an example of where you could say that might have ended my career if it had ended badly. I don't know. But it seemed like the right thing to do to me, and it ended up being the right thing. I'm not saying everything I ever suggested was, absolutely perfect, but you have to really leverage the team. I didn't make these decisions on my own. You have a team, and you're leveraging your information, your skills, your abilities, your history, and you make the best decisions you can.
What I love about the title of your book, Stalling for Time, and I know as sort of a serial entrepreneur, I'm always busy. I'm in a rush. I bet you if you ask my colleagues and friends, they say, Denise is busy in a rush. And what I think is really important to highlight here is so much of your technique is pause. And don't we need that nowadays? Like everybody wants instant gratification. I got to get to the answer.
Yeah.
As you just said, I'm struggling for power, my ego, and we go right to force. So let's talk about that a little bit. How do you get people to pause? I mean, 51 days with Waco. Let's dive in there. That's a long pause.
Yeah, and there are many in the FBI that would disagree with me on this, but I believe that if my negotiation team had been allowed to continue the strategy that was working, we
Mm,
got 35 people out, including 21 children, that it wouldn't have lasted 51 days, that we would have had it resolved much sooner. Now,
mm.
a lot of proud FBI agents, kind of have difficulty thinking that maybe something they were involved in led to the death of people. So they say, well, it was inevitable. It was going to end no matter what we did. Now, I don't subscribe to that at all. I think David Koresh was certainly the bad guy here, and had the ability to lead his people out every day, as we offered and suggested and made concessions for.
Right.
Yet that doesn't absolve the FBI of having also made some mistakes that contributed to the outcome.
Mm.
So time, when I was writing my book and seeking a title, I looked at my note-taking guide from when I first became a negotiator, and the first three words I wrote on there were "stall for time."
Mm.
And what time does is it lowers emotions. It allows us to think more clearly.
Mm-hmm.
Think of your own life. There's like everyone's life. There's just thousands of examples where someone has said or done something that has so upset you, and then the next day, well, that's not so bad.
Right. Right. True.
I've learned how
True.
to cope with that and deal with it. And it was a crisis yesterday. Today, it's a small problem that's resolvable. I remember when my son first learned to drive, he wrecked the car once, and my wife is waiting for him to come home, and she sees a tow truck go by the house with the car, and she goes, "That's not good. Was that our car?" And then a policeman shows up with my son, who had
Mm.
crashed into another car. And my wife almost fell to her knees, and the world's over. I'm typically away from home on a trip again.
Mm.
And I said, "Hey, is anybody hurt?" "No." I said, "Phew, it's a great day then. Don't worry about it. The car's metal, we get it fixed, whatever. My son will learn a lesson here." And, we accorded him appropriate disciplinary action for that. And he turned out to be an
My
amazing
Navy
human being.
SEAL.
Navy SEAL, yeah.
Right.
So the bottom line is that perhaps a poor example of it, but what's a crisis today and what has got your goat now? Give it a little time. It's why police come into a domestic disturbance and separate the combatants. It's the reason there's a 24-hour waiting period on buying a gun, or you're able to kick out of a contract. All these things are based on the realization and the appreciation that doing things in an emotional state can cause you buyer's remorse later on, or concern, and gives you time to cool down.
So using those kind of skills, the things you're talking about, how do you build trust with someone that doesn't want to build trust with you?
So, it can be very difficult. There's people that, particularly in the law enforcement context, that are yelling and screaming at you. They've probably had a particularly bad history with law enforcement in the past.
Right.
So, you show up and say, hey, let's be friends. And, it's a tough thing. You have to earn the right. And this is what we train. It's not going to come to you because of your rank or the uniform you wear. It's going to come to you because you project yourself as a decent, genuine human being. You're not going to lie to them. When they tell you they want something you can't do, you say, I don't think I can do that, but here's what we can do, and let's work together. You through the passage of that time that we just talked about, you can convey that you are someone worthy of their respect. And eventually you get to a point where perpetrators will say to us, Gary, I just don't know what to do. I don't know how to get out of this. Well, when I hear that, it's like, the lights go off, the
Game
siren,
over.
the champagne opens up, because now they're soliciting my opinion. I said, well, I think you should think about this. And here's how I would handle it if I was you. And let me help you, that sort of thing. And it's extraordinarily powerful. Now, does it work 100% of the time? No.
But what does really work 100% of the time?
Precisely.
I think this is a myth.
The most common call out that law enforcement negotiators have, not so much for the FBI, but with police, are suicides. And, I always tell police officers, if you respond to enough of those, somebody will carry through on their intent and kill themselves. The fact that they haven't yet when we arrive shows some ambivalence. Part of them wants to live, part of them wants to die. It gives us the proverbial foot in the door as a salesman to try to convince them against self-harm. But if you respond to enough of them, somebody will do it, and it's not your fault.
It's a sort of the game of numbers, unfortunately, as we say in sales.
Well, that's right.
Right?
That's right. Statistically.
What I do.
And go ahead.
I'm sorry. What I love about some of the work I've heard you speak on is that you try to let the person on the other side in your high stake riots, kidnappings, and so on know that they matter. And so much of the work in strategic communication comes down to when somebody's really out of their mind, aggravated in a boardroom, a meeting, a sales negotiation, your family member, right? They feel like they don't matter. So tell me how empathy ties into your principal work and how you get people to believe in it. Because that word has been thrown around quite a bit, right? Empathy, empathy, empathy. It's like clarity, clarity, clarity. So how do we get people to understand that that's like a really important thing to harness? And you can learn it like you move a creative muscle forward. The more you use it, the more it grows.
Yeah, empathy is a demonstration of concern and understanding. It's not sympathy is I feel sorry for you. You really screwed your life up. Empathy is it sounds like you've had some terrific challenges and you've overcome many, and I want to help you overcome this one. There's a whole difference right there. And I think people want to be listened to and they want to be understood. And a lot of times acting out behavior is based on their sense that no one's listening to me, no one's appreciating me, no one's taking my views into account. If you do those things that they feel they're not getting, then you're reaching out and you're helping to create a relationship. You're showing, hey, I respect your view. I don't necessarily share it, but I appreciate what you have to say. And, I get it. I think we can agree to disagree, but that's okay. We can do it respectfully and so forth and so on. And I think people are looking for that genuine, honest approach. So we say, don't lie, don't condemn, don't criticize, acknowledge and converse.
So I have a personal question to ask. So it seems like a dangerous occupation. Was your wife always cool with you running around to these very high stake, dangerous negotiations? I should have had her on.
Absolutely, that'd be a whole different show. I know. We've been married 51 years now, and
Wow, congratulations.
well, I've only been home 25, so it's no. She certainly deserves a medal for. We had 3 kids, and obviously, with so many other careers, the time where your family needs you the most is the time that your career is, the most challenging and requires the most activity. And of course, with mine, there's international travel, there's domestic travel, and there was late night calls,
Mm.
a couple calls a week. I'd have a negotiator deployed to the Philippines on a kidnapping, and they call for some advice in the middle of the night. I couldn't very well say, it's inconvenient, and let's talk tomorrow.
Right.
I mean, you get up and you grab your cup of coffee and your bathrobe and you say, okay, what's going on, and what can I do to help? And but yeah, it was a strain. It's funny, in all the years there was only one time, and I think it was a cumulative effect. I went to Peru in the late '90s when the Japanese ambassador's residence was taken over by hostages,
Oh,
and it was a 120-day siege. So I was down there for that. And as we approached Christmas, for the first and only time in my career, my wife called up my boss and kind of read him the riot act. Said,
good for
hey,
her.
send Batman home. I mean, it's there's other people in the business, and my boss said, "You're coming home," and I said, "Boss, I got more stuff to do now." And he said, "I don't think you understand." He said, "I'm not going to negotiate with that woman again. You're coming home." So yeah, but no, I mean, it's
Good for
tough.
her. Let's give her a shout out.
Yeah,
Yes.
no, absolutely. Her
51
name's
years.
Carol, and yeah, and it's tough on families. It's really
Yes.
tough on families, and it's also tough on dads. I mean, I don't want to get into that stuff too much, but there's been a lot written in the last couple decades about super mom.
Yeah.
Now in holding a big important job in the business world, and then also doing a lion's share of childcare and home.
It's challenging. Trust me.
No, I have no, and I've seen it with my daughters and my wife. But we should also drop a word for super dad, because my generation, our fathers, I don't think my father knew where the kitchen was. I mean,
Mm.
I don't think he was aware we had one. He just know the food magically appeared on the table somewhere. And he opened his drawer and all the clean laundry's folded in there. Had no idea where it came from.
Imagine that.
Yeah. And then you get to my generation, and even despite our work demands, we're far more engaged. And now
Yes.
I see my son and my son-in-laws, they've taken that much further. So there's a lot of really hard-working, dedicated dads out there that are juggling quite a bit too. And I know it's tough on families these
Yeah.
days with the economy the way it is, and other challenges. But that's
Dual
why
income,
communication.
unfortunately. Yeah. No, I
Yeah,
I salute super dads. I would say my brother's a super dad. My husband's definitely a super dad, and he can
good.
cook. I don't know if my dad could boil an egg, but that's all right. We love him anyways. Uh,
Exactly.
so,
Exactly.
tell me, when you look back on it, what was the best success and then the greatest failure that moved you to success? Because failing forward is important, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I would say, I could say that the same event was the best and the worst, and that would
Oh,
be Waco.
okay.
I mean, obviously, the outcome was terrible and not intended, and tragic.
Mm.
But also, there was some incredible things we did there. We invented some processes and procedures in the negotiation realm that are still used today, that were invented on the fly at
Like what?
Waco.
Give us one.
The way the team is set up, the way we processed information and intelligence, the way we dealt with intermediaries. There was a lot of stuff that came out of that, that we still use in teaching to this day. And then so it's a mixed bag. And again, I'm very proud that the team got out 35 people, 21 children, and sad that we didn't get more out.
Right.
I was replaced halfway through, so no one else came out after that replacement. But I guess another way of saying one of my favorite ones was the one I mentioned earlier in Montana, where we let the fellow fly to prison, to meet his boss. And that was 3 years after Waco, and the FBI's reputation had been severely damaged after Waco. And I grew up putting the FBI on a pedestal, and
Oh, yeah, for sure.
people always had a positive view of the FBI, maybe not so much today, but they did during my career. And so it was a tough blow for us that we lost perhaps some confidence in the American people. So we have this
Well, I
Montana.
want to demystify that for you because I don't know what age you are, and it doesn't matter what age I am. For all intensive purposes, we're 39. But my view of the FBI was that they went in to save the day, and you were lucky no matter what you got out of it because they were the final call in saving whatever could be saved. So from my purview, and I did read up on the Waco. I didn't watch the Netflix show because I'm very particular about documentaries, but I feel like I don't see it as a loss. That's not how it registered for me. So know
Well,
that I didn't. It
here's
didn't
here's
just.
here's my gauge on it,
Mm,
and I don't think the loss of life is necessarily a byproduct of negotiation failure or
right.
law enforcement failure. But I think what is did we get out everyone that we could have? And on
Well,
that basis, it's a failure because we could have gotten more people out. So that's kind of my basis.
that's your benchmark. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But so getting back. Oh, and one more thing I want to say. You should watch the Netflix documentary, the
Should
six
I?
part.
Did the
I
guy
was
play you
involved in that.
well, Michael Shannon?
Well, that's the T. That's the don't. In 2018, Paramount did a six-part mini
I
series,
got to write it down.
which is a
Okay.
dramatic series.
Okay.
And then, 3 years ago now, 4 years ago now, Netflix came out with a three-part documentary, and I was involved in both those projects. And the documentary is very, very good and very accurate if you really want to know what happened out there.
Yeah, Troy and
That
I
same,
always.
the same year, they came out with a sequel to the dramatic series, and I was again depicted by Michael Shannon, but nothing shown I did.
Oh, okay. Because that's the one I had done the research on. And Troy and I always look for good things on the weekend. So we will watch that one and comment in your show notes. What's the number one principle that you can share with us regular Joes that we can use in our family communication?
Yeah,
First, our family communication at the dinner table. Like, I want to move the needle on some things. I have a young college graduate. I don't want to be the helicopter mom where people go zzz over my head
yeah,
at dinner,
yeah.
but I
Well,
need to move the needle.
it's self-control.
Okay,
I
for me
mentioned
or
that.
her.
Well, no, and it's how you say things. When she was a teenager, my second daughter and my wife butted heads quite a bit, and I would listen to their disagreement, and later I would say to my wife, "I agree with every single thing you said. You were spot on. Everything you told her, the position you took was perfect, but you didn't say it the right way."
You sound like
Think,
Troy.
think about how you say things, how they are received by the people that you're trying to influence. I mean, are we being critical? Are we chastising? Are we belittling? Are we being sarcastic? We all do it, sometimes unconsciously, and I would say avoid that. You're at Thanksgiving dinner and crazy Uncle Charlie's there and he's spewing off some ridiculous conspiracy stuff, and you can say, Uncle Charlie, you're full of you know what, and shut the hell up. But it would be better to say, it seems like you have some really strong views on this, but today is a Thanksgiving meal for the family, and grandma's spent all day in the kitchen, and I think we should sit and reflect more on family matters and the good times we've had. And why don't we save these political discussions for later? That may or may not diffuse him, but if you are going to diffuse him, it's going to be something along those lines rather than saying, "Are you out of your mind?" That's only going to inflame it further.
Right.
So that's where the self control comes in. You may feel better telling him, "What are you, a nut?" Uh, but that's not going to help the problem. So we have a saying in negotiations: "Don't get even, get your way."
Mm.
So it's an important concept. Think about the long-term objective and what's the best pathway to get there. And it's certainly not increasing the confrontation or raising the temperature.
What do you think people get wrong about the word negotiation and the technique?
I think television has done a disservice
Yeah, for
to some
sure.
extent. I think it often comes across as even in the professional community, in police and law, as capitulation. And negotiate. We used to say as the United States, we still do. We won't negotiate with terrorists. Well, of course we will. It doesn't mean we're the actual policy is we won't make major concessions to them. We won't
Yeah.
give them money, release prisoners, change foreign policy, whatever that might be. But I guarantee you, if there's a plane load of terrorists at JFK Airport tonight, the FBI will negotiate with them, if for no other reason than to buy time and to see if we can get people released and maybe get them to surrender, and if, at a minimum allow us to assemble more resources and have them prepared to do what may be necessary, a tactical entry. So the act of negotiations, John Kennedy said, we should never negotiate out of fear, but we should never fear to negotiate. I mean, it's a powerful, it's discussion. It's that's all it is.
I feel like some people, well, I'm going to give you one and you can answer it for my clients. I have some clients that are fearful in big boardrooms to really voice their opinion. They have their opinions and they want to get their opinions heard. But instead of doing it right there with the leadership, they go outside the room and right? So those people are, for lack of a better word, a little, I want to say, not intimidated by a negotiation, but because they don't know how to do it, they don't do it. What are we telling those folks other than stop gossiping?
Yeah, I mean, I think, using your scenario, you're in the boardroom and you hear something that you think is very counterproductive to the team's objectives or the company's goals, whatever it might be.
Mm,
You can say, that's stupid. That won't work. We tried that before. That's probably going to create, animosity and bad feelings. It'd be better to say, I look at this a little differently, and here's my thoughts on what might help us better to achieve this goal. And people should feel comfortable saying that. Now, of course, let's face it, we have some bad leaders that may not want opposing points of view. And I don't have a magic recipe for waving my magic wand and getting rid of your knucklehead boss. But most leaders, if they're smart, will say, okay, I want to create an atmosphere here where I'm encouraging people to give me their advice. That's why they're here. If I was going to make the decision, I'd do it alone in my office. I want
good point.
input.
Right. Okay.
And that's an example of something you could say, boss. This is purely your decision, but I assume you called us here because you wanted our take on this project that we are considering. In that spirit, I'd like to offer these comments and suggestions. That's fine. A leader will most leaders will respect that, and again, there will be some that don't want to hear it.
So we touched briefly on, Uncle Crazy at the Thanksgiving table and espousing whatever conspiracy theories about anything, and take that up to the next level when you are negotiating perhaps a big giant sale. And you might have done some research. I'm really giving you client examples now. And you might have done your research or not, but you might not be feeling the other person, and you might have an internal bias, right? And that's prohibiting you from doing a good job at negotiating. What would you tell the person about their internal biases or not? Like, because everybody wants to think they're right? For the people that are starving to know they matter, that's one group. But then there's the other group that just wants to bulldog their way through. They're right, and they're going to win. So the idea of win-win is not in their vocabulary. How do you get through to those people?
Well, you can't get through to all of them, but I think you try to say, I think we've come to fully appreciate and understand your point of view on this, and are you open to hearing other points of view that might further clarify this issue we're trying to discuss? Because I've got some ideas if you'd like to hear them. And, that's the best you can do. They're either going to be receptive to hearing those ideas or not, and it's how you do it. It's how you say it. It's not, if it comes across as dismissive or critical, it's not going to be received as well as it would be if you do it the right way. Again, one of the big things I talk to audiences about now is it's how you say something. all the situations I was involved in,
Mm.
we generally would ask people who surrendered, what was it that we said?
Yeah,
Did it
what
make you
was it that you said?
Yeah, because we want to know, right? And this is surprising, Denise. I mean, the answer was almost always the same. I don't remember what you said, but I like the way you said it. Now
Mm.
think about that. And so much of our communication is tone, demeanor. If it's face to face, it's body language.
Mm.
These things that most of my stuff was on the phone. That's why I caveat that. But yeah, I mean, how do we come across? And are we likable? Are we genuine? Are we non-combative? And these are the things.
How do we know if we're likable and non-combative?
Denise,
And
it's like the Supreme Court judge said about pornography. I can't define it, but I know it when I see it, right? Um,
yes.
perhaps a poor example, but no, I think
No.
people you've met in your life,
Mm.
and maybe you go to a business function and you meet somebody new, you talk to them for 15, 20 minutes, and you go back with people you've known for a long time, and you might catch yourself saying, I really like talking to Gary. What an interesting person. He seemed like very nice, was interested in what we do at our company,
Mhm.
and seemed very genuine. That feeling you get.
Yes.
It may be difficult to articulate it more specifically than that, but you know it when you feel it.
I call it my
And we should all
intuition. I
strive.
mean, it's your internal gut. It's how
Well,
you read the
but what leads
situation.
to that what leads to that are some of these things I've talked about, the way they present themselves and carry themselves. I have a standing joke I tell audiences when I travel by myself and I'm giving a corporate speech and I'm in the hotel and getting a meal at the bar because I don't like sitting in a restaurant by myself. And I talk to the bartender, and whoever sits next to me becomes my target du jour. I mean, young, old, male, female, it doesn't matter to me. I make a point of saying, I'm going to learn everything I can about this person.
Mm.
And it's amazing what you find out and some of the great conversations you have. Now, every time you travel, sometimes you just want to be alone and quiet and have your meal and go off to your room. That's fine. But other times, there's opportunities to
Oh
engage
yeah, I
that we,
love to talk to everybody.
yeah, we should practice. What do you do? Oh, that's amazing. I
Mm.
mean, I met a guy at a bar once who his hobby was tight roping, and you go, well, that's a new one. Tell me, how did you get into that? How did you learn that? He's showing me videos. We became Facebook friends. I mean, there's most people have a fascinating story if you take the time to listen. And if you talked about things that are valuable and important to them,
Mm.
it's hard to get that spigot turned off. I mean, people like talking about themselves. We
That's
are.
for sure. Absolutely. So I want to
Yeah.
ask you a couple more questions before we close up. What's the biggest piece of advice you received that you're glad you didn't listen to?
The biggest piece of advice that I received that I'm glad I didn't listen to,
That's the only
gosh,
trick question we ask, but we put it in the show notes for you.
yeah. I mean, I'm not sure. I might have to think about that a little bit, Denise. I mean, I think it's ugh, I don't know. I'd have to think about that.
Okay,
I
so
find I might go back to this one I mentioned earlier, when people say, what do we gain from something? And I've very often found myself saying, what do we lose? Which is my way of saying, let's be more flexible. If we have a few minutes, I worked a prison riot in Lucasville, Ohio, and eventually we got the inmates to give us a list of what they wanted.
what was
And
it?
the list, 20 items. Well, it was a very interesting list. They said, we would like you to try to get better food in the canteen. We would like you consider changing the tuberculosis inoculation shots. We would like to
Wow.
have you review the policy of housing black and white inmates in the same cell. Everything had a caveat on it. Everything had a look into, examine, undertake, try,
Seems like a
whatever.
well thought out list as well.
It was. And initially the authorities said, this is under duress. We can't do this. And I said, and I was only advising on this case. It was a state matter. And I said, listen, first of all, you don't have to do any of it because you're agreeing under duress. But look at this list. I think you can do all of these things, and I think you should do all of these things because none of them require a specific outcome. they require you to take an action, to look at, to reconsider. And if you can't do that, I don't know what you can agree to.
Mm.
And of course, once they thought about it, they said, well, you're right. That does make sense. But the initial reaction was, I'm not going to make somebody tell me what I have to do.
That speaks to that concept, like listen and actually listen before you answer, right? It's like you
Correct.
said to these guys, listen, you can probably just look into these things. So I would say
Yeah.
am I right in saying your biggest thing is really active listening and being flexible as sort of your go-to mantras? Is that what we would leave the people with?
And self-control would be the other one too. Control your own emotions, the only thing you can actually control. Listen attentively and respond to people in a way that lets them know you understand the story or whatever the matter is that they're discussing and how they feel about it.
Mm.
Yeah, and those are the key elements. Acknowledging their point of view, restating the context, reflecting the feeling. This is the pathway. I mean,
Mm.
I developed something in the FBI called the behavioral change stairway, and the top step is cooperation. But we don't just show up and get cooperation. We have to earn the right. We have to go through these steps of, active listening, rapport building, all the things we have to do to let somebody know, yeah, I'm a law enforcement officer, but I'm treating you respectfully and I'm worthy of your respect. And I'm here to help you, not to make your day worse.
So
It's
I
a
want to do a
powerful
quick role
tool.
play with you, and then I want you to tell everybody where
All
they
right.
can find your book. And of course, we're going to give them your website. So give me one of those FBI exercises. Let's see how I do.
All right, let's say you come into me, you work for me,
Yeah.
I'm your boss, and you're very, very angry because you were passed over for a promotion that you thought you deserved.
Mm.
All right, let's start it out.
Now Mav is
So
on the
I'll
spot.
start.
Yes.
So Denise,
Mm.
you wanted to see me today? Please have a seat.
You know,
What's up?
Gary, I've really enjoyed working in the department with you under your leadership. I've learned so very much. And, it's my passion to contribute to the department in ways that I think are very unique to me, but also add a big benefit to the team. I'm not
Mhm.
really understanding why I wasn't considered or I was passed over for a recent promotion. Would you tell me more?
Okay, what I'm hearing, and I'm pleased to hear that you value your time in this company and you've focused your efforts on being a team member and contributing, but you sort of question why we made this decision to go with so and so rather than you. And I can understand how that would be confusing and troubling to you. Is that where we are here?
I am looking for feedback because I do
Yeah.
believe that I was passed over, and I would really want to know why before I say any more.
Well, I think that's a fair question, and I think I have to apologize you because I probably should have brought you in and explained to you the decision we made. You deserve that, and I didn't do it. So I'm sorry for that, sincerely and genuinely. You are right. You're a valued employee here. Your skills are tremendous, and I value having you on the team. The direction we went in was because the particular job at hand required a pretty significant background
Mm.
in procurement. And if you look at your resume, you have a much more limited skill set in that particular area. And that's why we went in the direction, even though that person hasn't been in the company as long. So there was some particular thought we put into it and why we made the decision. Now, I appreciate that you may not think that was the right decision, but I wanted you to know we didn't just make it capriciously.
Well, I do appreciate that explanation, and I can understand the decision making process there. Are there things that I can do in the future to be more in tuned with the possibility of a promotion in this organization as I invest more time here?
I have no complaints about your work, but it's nice to hear that you see a future with the company and you want to grow into the business. And this has helped me now to think about ways that I can task you with more challenging projects to give you that experience that would position you to be more competitive for some of these openings when they occur. And and I will commit to you now that I will make that effort to find those projects that I think will speak to your skill set and will enable you to make those contributions and at the same time advance.
Well, I do appreciate your time today. I know that you're extremely busy. And is there a good time for me to check back so we can continue this conversation? Because I want to stay in step with your vision too for the growth of the firm.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to talk, we can set up an appointment literally anytime you want. You're right. I have a busy schedule, but I always have time for valued employees like you. So, yeah, just let my secretary know that you'd like some time with me, and we'll set up the time. I'm always delighted to meet with you, and I appreciate particularly that while this has probably been on your mind for a while and
Oh,
maybe
yeah.
simmering, that you felt confident enough to come in and share your concerns with me, and I understand those concerns and I value your input. So thank you for coming in.
Thank you too. Well, that now for me, right, I would give that a lot of thought before I would go in to see my boss instead of
Right.
being reactive. But I also am a different decade in my life. I could see me as a 20-year-old with a hot head flying and be like, I worked all these hours, and then be like, and so I believe in a multi-generational workforce. We can all learn from our, gen this, gen that, and the others. But I don't like the word but, I always say yet where can we share today? Like, that's a very controlled narrative. I feel like I did okay considering you're like the chief negotiator of the FBI. But I could also see me at 30 being like, yeah, no, I am pissed. So what can we tell those people that are there saying, yeah, I am pissed, whether they're 30, 40, 50 or whatever? Like, how do we get people to put those parens around it so they can go to you as calm as we were?
Yeah, I mean, I think the first thing they have to do is succinctly lay out the issue as they see it. And then once the boss in this scenario has now acknowledged that he understands what the problem is, now you can add in the layer that, and it really hurt me that I wasn't considered. I was really disappointed. I really like working here, and I sort of felt that job was, uniquely suited. I was uniquely suited for that job, and being passed over, it really hurt me. And so that's the second piece of it. I need to know that.
Mm.
So as a boss, now I have an opportunity to speak to you why this happened, but also to acknowledge that somewhere along the line we dropped the ball on helping you understand or explaining to you what we did or making sure we're giving you an opportunity to go where you want. I mean, to take the next step. So,
And that's with
yeah,
the small, underpinning of hopefully you have an emotionally mature boss that's not like maniacal and willing to do and be the
yes.
leader that you hope they are. Well, I have
Well,
to.
again, yeah. I mean, I tell people, I can tell you the skills. If we reverse roles, we could play that. But I think you don't know. The boss is. You have to go into it knowing that you can only control yourself. You can hopefully influence the boss's ability to comprehend what you're saying and the end result of the conversation, but you can't control it. And again, most bosses are going to be, unless your relationship is just in the toilet, they're going to be reasonably receptive to meeting and hearing. But and as long as you don't turn into an offensive, obnoxious complainant, they're probably going to respond effectively. But there are some bosses that you know know everything, and
Self-serving, yeah.
because I said it, that's why. Even as parents, we have a frustrating point. You said, we all talk about, you got to explain to your kids why this certain action was bad or whatever. At the end of the day, we just say, because I said so. I mean, we all have a frustration
Right.
point, but we have to really try to avoid that and give people a chance to talk. Listening is the cheapest concession we can make. It costs you nothing. Nothing.
Isn't that the truth? And it's so, like, when you sit down and actually talk about it in the way that we're talking about it, it's the easiest thing, with a smile, right? Communicate with a smile when you're listening. Your body language is 70% of that equation, and being really locked in, eye on eye, and showing appreciation and just being true to yourself while you let the other person know they matter. All right, how are we leaving everybody today, Gary? What are we telling them that makes them better negotiators, better in their communication, better in their heart for the results?
I think we've touched on that. I mean, control how you approach a situation, and be cognizant of that is the only thing that you absolutely have control over. But through that, you will enhance your ability to influence the outcomes that you hope to achieve. Just stepping back one step, if you're that boss,
yes,
and you have made a mistake, and I've made them as a boss before, acknowledge it. No one's going to question your authority because you admit that, I'm a human being. We had a lot going on then, Denise, and I think when I made that decision on hiring the other guy, it didn't cross my mind that this was a position that you were interested in. And, I blame myself for that, and I apologize to you. That's okay. It doesn't make me a weak or feckless boss. It shows that I'm human and I'm fallible.
Tell the truth.
Then it also, should commit me to, show you more deference not deference, but to be more attentive in the future to what I might do to some extent to make it up to you, and to give you opportunities and challenges and recognition. A boss should praise their workers, and give them credit for things. It's something so many forget to do.
Well, this is true. This is true.
Yeah, and most people say, well, I want a bonus. I want a bonus. Well, bonuses are great, but that's not why people step up to the plate and give the company the extra measure. They do it because they value their boss. They feel appreciated and understood and valued. That's why people come to a company. That's why they stay with a company. So, which speaks to your retention and the quality of your work and the team atmosphere. All of that goes towards a better business model, but leaders have to be attentive to that.
It's what you said earlier about the hostages, how you made them feel, right? People will work overtime without compensation sometimes because they feel so good about their company and what they're doing. And I see it time and time again with so many of my clients. Like, people are there for the culture, how it makes them feel, and the outcomes that they're providing in their goods and services. But we've all had, crazy bosses and bad cultures, and
we have.
Yeah.
But I used to send guys and gals overseas for weeks and weeks at a time, and there's no structure in the FBI for them to get that time back. It's okay, you got back Sunday after 6 weeks abroad. Okay, see you Monday at work. And I would say to somebody, hey, listen, I don't want to see you for a week. Spend time with your family. And we'll take care of the administrative part of it. Now, I was probably breaking the law when I did that, but I proudly would do it again. And you have to take care of your people.
Family first, for sure.
Absolutely, And, well, the FBI used to have this saying, family comes first, and it was a big lie because the job always came first,
right.
But so you try in ways, I met with Janet Reno once when she was the Attorney General.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, I for a period of time, I was also administratively managing her protection team. And I went in to meet with her one day in her office. And her protection team leader told me, he said, when Ms. Reno keeps us out late at night, she calls our wives and apologizes.
Wow.
The Attorney General of the United States calling Mrs. Smith and saying, I'm so sorry, your husband kept him out 2 hours later than normal tonight. We had an important meeting. And, she just, whatever people think, she had a lot of dignity. She would have to fly somewhere at the last minute, would get a first class ticket, was always available. She'd go to the waiting room in the airplane, and she would change her ticket with somebody in coach. Said, you take the first. Said, I will not, as a government official, be seen flying first class.
There's a lot to be said for decorum and manners, right? That opens the path to creativity and the art of negotiation, right? It's just
Well,
respect.
it's a leadership issue too.
Yeah.
It's demonstrating to your team that you're willing to do what you expect from them, and that carries a lot of weight. It's always left an impression with me when I heard that story, and that's good leadership. I'm sure I didn't always live up to it, but it had an impact on me.
I grew up in family business. My grandmother ran her husband's automotive service company, Ford dealership. He died suddenly when she was 49. He was 54. And she said, I'm never going to give you a job I wouldn't do myself. And that's how my husband and I run our firms. Like, I'm never going to give you a job and you will see me there, the savant leader rolling up my sleeves. I don't know. I just like to be active and involved. I don't like to sit on a throne, even if I'm the boss. I really...
that old management theory, from 20 years ago, management by walking around. I mean, there's a lot to be said for that, It is. People want to know that, they can say hi to the boss, or the boss may know their name, or ask how their kid's operation went, or how the softball game was for his daughter, whatever it is.
Just being human.
As a boss, you can't remember all those things, but you should make an effort, and that's what counts. And people see that, and they put value in it. I mean, obviously, if it's phony and very superficial, that's probably going to be counterproductive. But do it sincerely and genuinely, And how's it going on the assembly line? We're making pretty good numbers. You got any ideas on what we might do better? The boss is soliciting me, a line worker, for my thoughts. And maybe the thoughts are nonsensical, but give the person time to articulate them, and they feel valued. People don't expect you to do what they ask, but they expect to be listened to.
You matter. I go back to what we started with. People matter, and they need to know. Well, this has been a fascinating conversation with you. And I can't tell you, I was nervous, everyone. I was nervous interviewing Gary Noesner. I really had to prep up here. I wasn't as slapsticky as I normally am, but I am fascinated by the art of strategic negotiation at your high level. And what I love about it is we can bring it down to everybody can use it. So as we're leaving our audience today, you can go to GaryNoesner.com. I'm going to spell it for you, and it's going to be in the show notes. GaryNoesner.com. You can find his book, Stalling for Time, My Life as an FBI Hostage Negotiator, on his website and Amazon.
Yeah, it's all
over. And you can hire Gary to speak for your organization in the field of negotiation. What else am I missing, Gary?
No, that's it. I mean, I would. We talked about some of those television shows. They might want to check out I don't even know if it's still on Netflix, but the 3-part documentary.
I think we're going to have to check out the Netflix documentary, the 3-parter.
Waco American Apocalypse, I think, is the name, and don't confuse that with the dramatic series that were on either side of that, but which are fine. It's entertainment, but
no, we want to know the real story. We want to see you live in action.
There have been maybe a dozen documentaries on it through the years, and I think this one is far and away the most comprehensive and accurate.
Thank you so much for your time, Gary. We deeply appreciate all of your insights today. Listen, my friends, you can find Mav's Coffee Clarity wherever you listen to your favorite pods: Apple, Spotify, iHeart, Amazon, YouTube. Go to DeniseDiGrigoli.com to learn more about me and my services. Today's show's been sponsored by Drive Media and Consulting. Peace out, my friends. Gary and Denise have got to get back to work.